Hey guys, welcome back to another video. In this video, I'm going to be going over 7 account goals to complete before you go bossing. I will have timestamps in the description to each of the account goals, so if you want to jump back and forth, you can do so there. I hope you enjoy the video. The first thing that I would suggest you do before you decide to take on bossing is figure out what combat style you want to use. Right now, there is 4 combat styles in RuneScape. You have Magic, Ranged, Melee, and Necromancy. As of the beginning of 2024, Necromancy is the best combat style in RuneScape. It's also the easiest to learn and become comfortable with. So if you are someone who is newer to the game and wants to get into bossing and doesn't really have a combat style in mind that they want to use, I would recommend going with Necromancy just because it is beginner friendly. The abilities, there isn't much confusion there, and you have just a standard rotation that you will try to follow. Once you have a combat style chosen, you should try and start to understand the abilities. There are certain abilities that you'll want to use in certain situations. With Necromancy, you have your basic abilities, so you have your auto attack, just the Necromancy basic ability. Then you have Soul Sap and Touch of Death. And you have to manage those stacks that you will get. So with Soul Sap, you get residual souls, and you can use that either with the Soul Strike, which will stun a target, or you can use Volley of Souls, which unleashes all of your stacks for a powerful ability. And so just learning the combat style, knowing which abilities to use is really important with bossing. Once you have an understanding of the abilities that you are able to use, you'll be able to fit that in with different bossing situations, and it will really help you out. Necromancy is a great skill to go through just as you're training up the skill and slowly unlocking the different abilities. You will be trying them out and learning them. And so Necromancy is by far recommended for newer or beginner players. The second goal you should strive for is unlocking certain abilities with your combat style. So if you are using Necromancy, you will want to unlock various abilities through the Well of Souls. You'll definitely want Living Death, which requires level 76 Necromancy, but you also want the Conjure and Command abilities for the 3 different conjures. Unlocking Spirit Pack and Darkness, and just a lot of these different abilities and unlocks are really helpful for Necromancy. Another ability that is almost essential for bossing is the ability Devotion. It is a defensive threshold ability, so you do need 50% adrenaline to use it, and it costs 15%, and it is extremely helpful. Basically, it increases the effectiveness of your protection prayers to 100% for 9.6 seconds. So this is essential for a lot of different bosses, one being Arc Glacier, which is a great boss for beginner players to get into. When the Arc Glacier uses its big beam, it will basically hit 10 or 20k damage, and you need Devotion to avoid that damage. Devotion can be obtained a few different ways. So one is by paying 3,500 reward currency from the Anima Island Distraction and Diversion, but more commonly it is obtained through a rare drop from either General Grador, Krayara, or Avianchi's or Bandos followers. While Devotion is an ability that is needed for many bosses and is sort of like an essential to get into bossing, there is another ability or spell to work towards. It isn't needed to obtain before bossing, but it definitely is helpful for some more endgame bosses, and that is Disruption Shield. Disruption Shield is definitely more of an endgame spell. It is in the Lunar Spellbook and does need 290,000 produce points. So it's, again, not something that you would need to obtain before bossing, but it's something helpful to work towards. So it's sort of like just a bonus tip in this guide. To get produce points, the easiest way to do that is to get it through the Traveling Merchant, through the Livid Plants. So if you're ever checking the Traveling Merchant shop and see that it's selling some Livid Plants, just buy them to get the produce points, and over time you'll end up unlocking Disruption Shield. It does also require the Lunar Diplomacy quest to be completed, So that is something you should try to work towards completing as well. The spell is super useful. Basically, it just negates a single attack. So you can see how that would be quite helpful for bossing. It can be used for things like Nexus Ice Prison, Telos's Bomb mechanic, Samurac's insta-kill mechanic, just many uses for this spell, so it's something to work towards as you are building up your account. The next few goals are somewhat generic, but they are extremely helpful. So the next goal is unlocking curses. Curses require the Temple at Senisen quest to be completed, which does have a long list of skill requirements and quest requirements, but it is something to work towards. The main curse that is most helpful is Soul Split. There are so many situations where Soul Split is helpful, and many bosses like Raziel where Soul Split is basically camped the entire fight. Now Soul Split, it heals the player by 10% of the damage dealt. So you're going to be getting passive healing, and if you're ever dealing a ton of damage all at once, you're going to be able to heal quite a bit from that. When you do get into bossing, you will notice that a lot of the bosses, sometimes there is a prayer flicking mechanic that is really helpful. This would be used from bosses like the Arclaysor, Zamorak, and especially Raksha. It's when you're switching from one protection prayer or deflection curse to Soul Split and back and forth. And it just gives you some passive healing while also protecting yourself from the incoming hit. So Soul Split, it's extremely helpful to have. Curses will also unlock the deflection curses, which is just a better version of the protection prayers, except that it deflects some damage back at the target. And then also at 95 prayer, you will unlock Turmoil, Anguish, Torment, and Sorrow, which are all just equivalents for the different combat styles. These 4 curses give you plus 10% damage in their respective styles and plus defense levels. It's extremely helpful and it increases your DPS a ton, so it is really good to have the curses unlocked and 95 prayer. Another really helpful goal is to have a high summoning level. So this could mainly be for having a Beast of Burden unlocked. So at level 96, you get the Pack Yak, which holds 30 additional slots, so you can fill that full with food, and it makes learning bosses much easier. At level 67 summoning, you get the War Tortoise, which holds 18 slots, so that is doable, especially for mid-level players. It isn't as difficult to get to 67 as 96 summoning. So at least I would try to get to 67. But summoning, it can also be really helpful to use the other familiars that are available as well, such as the Nihils for extra hit chance. Having this summoning level for the different binding contracts is also quite helpful. So Hellhounds, they only require level 45 summoning, but they will absorb 20% of any damage dealt to you by taking the hit itself, so just reduces damage by 20%. Blood Reavers, they are really good for poison builds. They require level 73 summoning. Then there's also Calgarian Demons, which increase the crit chance, level 90 summoning for them, and Ripper Demons at level 96 summoning, which is basically just a DPS summoning creature, which just attacks the target as well. The next account goal is being able to create overloads. So overloads require level 96 Herblore, which can be boosted. And so once you do get 96 Herblore, you can create overloads, which is a potion that will increase your combat stats. And one of the main benefits of these potions is that it is a static increase, meaning that it doesn't decrease over time. After the 6 minutes is up, the stat boost is gone completely, but it doesn't diminish like other potions. This is really helpful for certain bosses like Araxor, which consistently drains your stats, or if you're just drinking Cerdome and Brews. Those would drain your stats normally, but if you have an overload active, it won't. So it is extremely helpful for many bossing scenarios. One of the next main goals that you should strive for is obtaining at least tier 70 plus gear. Now, Necromancy, again, is one of the easier skills to obtain this armor, but for all 4 of the combat styles, basically the armor for tier 70 is fairly cheap. With magic, ranged, and melee, you have the God Wars Dungeon 1 armor, which is pretty decent power armor. You won't be able to do some of the higher end bosses, but you will be able to start learning some of them. In fact, I was using ranged when I first started bossing, and I used Armadillo armor for a while. I learned all the God Wars Dungeon 1 and 2 bosses, and Raxor in Armadillo gear with just tier 70 weapons. So it definitely can be done, and it's a good starting point to at least get tier 70. With Necromancy, it isn't so difficult to create your own tier 70, tier 80, and tier 90 gear. So that is something I would try to strive for, is at least get tier 70, but also just continue to work towards the next tier when you can. When you do reach level 80 combat stats, level 90, the first thing you will want to try and get is a new weapon. DPS is the most important thing, especially if you have curses and soul split, because the more damage you deal, the more health you will heal. And finally, this 7th tip is to get Invention Perks. Invention Perks increase your DPS a ton, so they are extremely helpful when you are learning to boss. And you can even just get some basic Invention Perks. You don't need the optimal, really expensive perks. You can really just spend a few mil to get some Invention Perks on your weapons and your armor. Invention Perks can easily increase your DPS by at least 10%, and you can also get other perks on your armor, like Impatient to generate more adrenaline, or if you're using Necromancy, you could get a perk like Invigorating, which will help you generate more adrenaline on your Necromancy basic attack, or the auto attack. Checking out a resource like the PVME Encyclopedia, which is where I got the information on screen, can be really helpful towards figuring out which perks are best for which weapons or which combat styles. It is really helpful to get some of these starter perks on your combat gear, because it really can help improve your ability to deal with certain mechanics and kill bosses a bit faster, which will just ease your way into it. And so those are my 7 account goals before bossing. If you do complete all 7, then you are set to at least start bossing. I will be coming out with a video shortly on 5 beginner bosses that I would start with if you are looking to get into bossing. So do stay tuned for that, and make sure to hit the thumbs up button and subscribe for more RuneScape 3 content. I hope you guys enjoyed the video, and I'll see you all in the next one. Peace.